It's the sin you commit over coffee. It's the sin that disguises itself as sharing a concern or just venting. It's the sin that feels so casual, so normal, so ingrained in our daily conversations that we barely even notice we're committing it. But according to the saints and the solemn teaching of the church, it is a spiritual poison. It is a sin that St. James compares to a small fire that can set an entire forest ablaze. It is a sin that murders reputations, destroys trust, and darkens the soul of the one who commits it. This is the sin of gossip. We live in a culture that is saturated with gossip. Tabloid magazines, reality television, and social media all thrive on it. We are conditioned to have an insatiable curiosity about the lives, and especially the failings, of other people. And this attitude has seeped into our own personal conversations. We talk about our neighbors, our co-workers, our fellow parishioners, our family members, and so often, the conversation turns negative. We share a juicy story we heard, we criticize a decision someone made, we speculate about their motives. It feels harmless, but it is not. The Catechism of the Catholic Church is extremely clear on this point. It lists sins against the 8th commandment: you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, and it includes 2 specific sins that are at the heart of gossip. The first is calumny, which is lying about someone to harm their reputation. This is when you invent or pass on a falsehood about another person. The second, and far more common, sin is detraction. Detraction is the sin of revealing another person's real faults to someone who has no right to know them. Let that sink in. Even if the story is true, if you are revealing someone's private, failing to a third party for no good reason, you are committing the sin of detraction. This is the essence of most gossip. We are trafficking in the true but negative and private information of others for the sake of entertainment or to make ourselves feel superior. Why is this sin so serious in the eyes of the Church? The first reason is because it violates justice. A person has a right to their good name. A good reputation is a precious possession, and it is a grave injustice to steal it. St. Thomas Aquinas taught that detraction is a more serious sin than theft, because a person's good name is more valuable than their material possessions. When you gossip about someone, you are committing an act of robbery. You are stealing their reputation, something they may never be able to fully recover. The damage is often irreversible. A lie can travel around the world before the truth has a chance to put its boots on. The sound of a whispered accusation can linger in a person's mind long after it has been proven false. The second reason gossip is so serious is because it violates charity. The great commandment is to love our neighbor as ourselves. Gossip is the exact opposite of love. Love seeks to build up, to protect, and to think the best of others. Gossip seeks to tear down, to expose, and to think the worst. It takes a perverse kind of pleasure in the faults of others. The Church Fathers had very strong words for this. St. John Chrysostom said that the gossip is worse than a cannibal, because a cannibal only consumes the dead flesh of a person, but a gossip devours the reputation and soul of a living person. When we are tempted to gossip, we should ask ourselves a simple question. Am I speaking about this person in a way I would want them to speak about me? The third reason gossip is so damaging is what it does to our own souls. When we make a habit of gossip, it corrupts our character. It makes us cynical, judgmental, and negative. We become spiritual vultures, constantly scanning the horizon for the carcass of someone else's failure. It fills our hearts with a subtle pride, making us feel better about ourselves by focusing on the faults of others. It also destroys our ability to have authentic, trusting relationships. A person known for gossip is a person who cannot be trusted. People will be friendly to their face, but they will never share anything of substance with them, for fear that it will become the subject of the next conversation. The gossiper ends up isolated, surrounded by superficial relationships. The spiritual poison of gossip also damages our relationship with God. When we judge our brother, we are usurping the role of God, who is the only true judge of hearts. When we fail to love our neighbor, we are failing to love God. So how do we stop? How do we break this deeply ingrained habit? The saints give us practical advice. The first step is to recognize the gravity of the sin. We must stop treating gossip as a minor fault. We must call it what it is, a serious violation of justice and charity, and we must confess it in the sacrament of reconciliation. The second step is to practice custody of the tongue. St. James says that the person who can control their tongue is a perfect person. This requires discipline. We must learn to think before we speak. Before sharing a piece of information about someone, we should apply a three-part test, often attributed to Socrates. First, is it true? Do I know for a fact that this is true, or am I just repeating a rumor? Second, is it good? Is this a positive and edifying piece of information? Third, is it necessary? Is there a real, compelling reason why this person needs to know this information? If a piece of information fails any one of these three tests, we should keep it to ourselves. A great way to stop a gossip session in its tracks is to gently apply this test. When someone starts to tell you a negative story about someone else, you can simply ask, "Why are you telling me this?" Or, perhaps, "We shouldn't talk about them when they asked here to defend themselves." This can be uncomfortable, but it is an act of charity to both the person being spoken about and the person who is speaking. The third and most powerful step is to replace the habit of gossip with the habit of charitable speech. Make a conscious effort to speak well of others. When you hear someone's name mentioned, try to think of something good to say about them. If you cannot think of anything good to say, then follow the advice of Saint Teresa of Avila. Say nothing at all. Pray for the people you are tempted to gossip about. This changes your heart toward them. Instead of seeing them as a subject for criticism, you begin to see them as a brother or sister in need of God's grace, just like you. In our loud, critical, and judgmental world, a person who refuses to gossip, who always speaks with charity, is a radical and powerful witness to the gospel. They become an oasis of peace and trust in a desert of cynicism. Conquering the sin of gossip is a lifelong battle, but it is a battle that, with God's grace, we can win. It is the battle to transform our tongue from a weapon that destroys to an instrument that heals. If you find mysteries like this compelling, consider following for more content that illuminates the eternal truths of the Church.